Does anyone else feel like a certain console's made for a certain game genre or franchise? Like the NES and 2D platformers, the 360 and first-person shooters, the Wii U and Zelda. It just feels like certain platforms are meant for something, and with the Nintendo DS, its match is Pokemon. More Pokemon games came out for the DS than any other Nintendo console until the Switch, and many people my age view these games as the peak of the franchise. The first installments to come out for the DS were Diamond and Pearl in 2006, followed by the typical third version, Pokemon Platinum in 2008. So I thought it'd be nice to take a look back at Gen 4 if the remakes haven't only come out a year ago, and with Scarlet and Violet coming out here soon. And I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't enjoy these games that much when I first played them. Now, a lot of it has to do at the time I was doing it. It wasn't a good time. I was just, I didn't really play them that much, but you know what? I'm gonna give it another shot, and hopefully this time I'll be able to enjoy these games completely. Let's begin. These games take place in a new region, Sinnoh, based off Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan. And because of that, it's pretty cold, about as cold as Northern Europe, and Platinum reflects this by having snow piled up in a number of places, alongside some new winter outfits for the player. The professor of Sinnoh is Rowan, a slightly angrier version of Professor Oak. Your rival in this game is a boy named Barry. He's not an overachieving jerk like Blue, a criminal like Silver, or a casual rival that's a possible love interest like May/Brendan. Barry has known the main character for whole lives, kind of like Blue, only he's a lot friendlier towards you. His personality is a lot more erratic, and overall, he's more of a comic relief kind of character. Honestly, before I replayed this game, I really didn't remember how good of a rival Barry is. I mean, I think he's a good friendly rival done right, because nowadays most rivals are just too friendly towards you. He has just enough to where you're kind of annoyed by him, but you don't hate him. So yeah, props to the game developers for making another good rival. Unfortunately, after this, the only good rivals for the rest of the series, in my opinion, at least excellent rivals, are in Black and White. You have Chirin and Bianca. And they're the last ones to be super interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's some others that are okay, but I feel like now in like X and Y, it was quantity over quality. In Sun and Moon, it was okay, just not as good. And then Sword and Shield, yeah. After that, there's Lucas/Dawn. Sort of like in the previous game, this character will be whatever avatar you don't choose. If you choose to play as male, this character will be Dawn. If you choose to play as female, this character will be Lucas. He/she is an assistant to the professor, and throughout the journey, instead of competing with you, they help you out. They teach you stuff and give you things, and are relevant to the plot and a couple other scenes in the game. And overall, they're okay. They're a decent character in the game's story. And as for new things added to the gameplay, there's a lot to cover. Like every other DS game, the top screen is the main game display, while the touchscreen is used for a number of things. Firstly, during battles, the move commands pop up on the bottom screen, leaving the top screen a lot less cluttered. Outside of battle, you can use a new device, a Poketech. You can use it to do a number of things on the touchscreen, including a watch, a step tracker, an item radar device, a calculator in case you decided to play some Pokemon while doing your math homework, a memo pad in case you want to write something down but don't have any pencils or paper lying around the house for godforsaken reason, a map, and whatever the hell this is. I do really like the Poketech, honestly, though. It brings it back to the mid-2000s when Diamond and Pearl came out and cell phone apps were just starting to take off. But honestly, I forget it even exists most of the time and pay no attention to it. However, the most significant thing Diamond and Pearl added to the series was its online functionality. In 2014, the server shut down, and it hasn't been possible to play online for almost a decade now, but fans have made their own servers to bring this mode back to life, which goes to show how amazing a fan base can be at times. Moving on, we have aspects that weren't exactly new, but improved upon. We already discussed last time how Ruby and Sapphire's time cycle wasn't as good as it was in Gold and Silver, right? Well, here it comes back full force. The lighting in wild Pokemon change depending on the time of day. There are once again lots of time-based events. The biggest improvement compared to Gold and Silver here is how the in-game clock goes off the console's internal clock, not a battery, that's also the battery used to preserve the save data, and dies within a decade most of the time. Which is awesome, truly awesome. You can also you change the clock, it's not good. Time-based events don't work for a day, as I'm told, so, and you can't really cheat, so yeah. As for my Sinnoh team, I think it's one of the best Pokemon teams I've ever had, honestly. I once again managed to get all 3 starters. I already chose Piplup when I played Diamond a few years back, so I bred a Piplup from that. A copy of Platinum I had a Grodile, so I traded that to my copy of Diamond, and I bred a Turtwig from that, traded it back over, and then I chose Chimchar for my starter, and I had all 3 of them, which again made my team kind of overpowered, but I'm not complaining. Chimchar is probably the best choice though if you're playing Diamond and Pearl because of a lack of fire types, which is something I'll go over in a bit. Chimchar evolves into Monferno and then into Infernape. It's part fighting type like Blaziken and has good speed. Piplup evolves into Prinplup, which then evolves into Empoleon. It's part steel type, and what was awesome for me is that it was born with some of the best moves my old Empoleon had in Diamond, like Hydro Pump, Surf, Ice Beam, stuff you don't get until the late game, making the earlier game so much easier. Turtwig evolves into Grotle, and then into Torterra. Torterra is part ground type, although it does take a while to learn strong moves. My other team members include a Honchkrow, a Garchomp, and a Galeed. All of them took a while to get strong, at least early on in the game, but by the end my team was unstoppable, destroying everything it touched. Well, almost. And if you don't get the reference, my Galeed is named after an Earthbound character and not feces. But if there's one word I'd use to describe this game, it's relaxing. The atmosphere just gives such a chill vibe and soothing vibe, with its music and vast areas to explore. It's kind of the game that's best to play late at night or early in the mornings, where which are the times I played this game the most often, as you can tell from the footage. Another thing I found different that's odd is just how differently I viewed my goals in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum compared to the other Pokemon games. In the rest of the series, I'm thinking about gyms and a main story, but here, there's a heavy emphasis on, exploring routes and fighting trainers, getting your team stronger, and, just my mind is just on roaming around and building up my team. So, it's awesome. I liked it playing this game like this. It's pretty relaxing, and I really need a game like this at a time like this where I'm just stressed and, everything just sucks right now in my life. Like, seriously, I don't want to go into detail, but man, I really needed this game in Emerald, so thank you, this game, for existing. Alright, now it's time to go over some negative aspects of Gen 4, and unfortunately there's a lot of them, especially in Diamond and Pearl. Platinum did fix quite a few, but it's still flawed in a lot of ways. Like I said earlier, Chimchar is the best choice for a starter because fire Pokemon in Sinnoh are scarce. In Platinum, you're able to get more early on though, so that's cool. And like in Ruby and Sapphire, there are once again 8 HMs. So if you don't want to switch out HM slaves constantly, you can kiss a third of your team's moveset goodbye. I mean, to be fair though, Rock Climb, Surf, and Strength are at least decent. You only need Waterfall and Defog a few times in the whole game, so... and Fly, yeah, I would never not have Fly. Now, the biggest problem with this game isn't anything major or really something you notice. It's hard to describe what exactly it is, but it kind of lacks polish. I feel bad for saying that, but what I mean is there's a lot of minor things that really need it tweaked. Like, for instance, you see my footage right now, all these bars on the side, these borders around the screen that are like white or black or whatever that shouldn't be that way. There's glitchy edges around the screen. That's actually something that's in the game. It's not like a glitch with my capture card or something that's unique to only certain versions of the game. In every single Gen 4 game, it was there. No one noticed that, and I don't know how. I mean, to be fair, on the actual original DS, it's kind of hard to notice, but the fact that it went so long without anyone noticing is kind of surprising. Another problem is just how slow everything is. Now, walking isn't too bad, and it's way better in Platinum than it was in Diamond and Pearl, but things like surfing, and especially when HP goes down, it's just a nightmare. After that though, I'm gonna be honest, there's really not a whole lot of problems with this game. It's pretty good for the most part. So overall, I'm really glad I gave this game a second shot. This is kind of off topic, but we have to talk about the Old Chateau. Probably the spookiest place in Pokemon. Yeah, Lavender Town is freaky, but it's mostly seen that way because of either creepypastas and the limitation of the original Game Boy. To be honest, I always thought the Lavender Town theme was awesome. I listened to it all the time when I was in my early teens. While I was a little creeped out by it, it never made me feel uneasy or, commit suicide like those creepypastas. The old chateau, meanwhile, is an old building in the middle of Eterna Forest, which is already kind of creepy on its own, but relaxing in a way too. So, creepy and relaxing. That's actually a good combination for me right now. Halloween, need stress reliever, so this is awesome for me right now. When you first reach the entrance, you can't enter though, because you don't have cut quite yet. Later, when you come back to the place, the gym leader of Eterna City, Gardena, is out in the forest right outside the mansion. She does the whole "I'm not scared" trope and then runs off, leaving the player alone to explore the place. The music here is unsettling. I'm honestly impressed at how creepy and unnerving it is. This song always puts you on edge, thinking someone's gonna pop out at any second. And I swear to God, I get a heart attack every time I get a random encounter. What's weird though is that there's not really a whole lot in the chateau if you really think about it. There's no trainers, no super important items, and there's no major relevance to the story. There's a few items here, and a rotom to capture from the TV, but not much else. Except for ghosts, that is. And I'm not talking about ghost Pokemon. You see right here, in this room next to you, what looks like a little girl. There's no way to interact with these ghosts either, and they aren't even hostile to you. You never fight them or talk to them, which honestly makes them that much creepier. Now, what about the region's evil teams, gym leaders, and legendaries, you may ask? Well, let's start with the gym leaders. Rock is the first one. He uses rock types, which I hate. Why do 3 of the first 4 Pokemon generations have to have rock type gyms as the first ones? Because the fire type starter, they're really hard to do, especially if you can't find a water or grass type. Next is Gardena, a grass type user, and frankly a pushover, well at least if you have Chimchar. The third gym leader varies depending on which version of the game you're playing. Platinum, the third gym leader, is Fontiana, a ghost-type user, who has a broken French accent, which doesn't make any sense now that Kalos is a thing. After that is Maylene. She uses fighting types, and people with a foot fetish must love her. Then there's Crasher Wake, who's just a fat guy with mental problems, and uses water types. In Diamond and Pearl, the order of these 3 is different, with Maylene being the third gym leader, Crasher Wake being 4th, and Fontiana being 5th. But they changed the order to create less of a gap between the second and third gyms. The 6th gym leader is actually Rock's father, Brian. His steel types are tough to beat without a water, fire, or ground type, which I thankfully had. Number 7 is Candace. I can't tell if she's 6 or if she's 26, and I feel bad for not being able to tell, but her ice types are ridiculously easy to beat with Infernape. And lastly, there's Volkner. I like how he's such a pro at battling that he's bored with it, and all his team are pretty strong electric types. I could have had a cool battle on my hands, but I had a Garchomp, so it was one of the easiest battles in the history of me playing video games. So if you want this fight to be good, yeah, don't have Garchomp or Torterra, because yeah. And that's Sinnoh's gym leaders for you. Well, they're not as iconic as Kanto's or Johto's, but they do have a decent amount of personality compared to them. Black and White would further build upon a gym leader's personality, giving us the best in the series in my opinions in terms of character, but I'll talk about that another time. By another time, I probably mean I don't know, 5 years from now. So stay tuned. Now, on to Sinnoh's evil team, Team Galactic. In previous games, there's Team Rocket, who's basically just the Mafia. And then there's Team Magma/Aqua, who are revolutionaries who use crime to achieve their goals. Team Galactic, meanwhile, is interested in world domination, and their leader, Cyrus, is the most evil character in the franchise after Geddes. He sees emotion and spirit as having no purpose and wants to rid the world of both. You see him for the first time very early on in the game in various locations. You don't know who he is exactly, giving him a mysterious vibe. Like any other team, they do a bunch of evil stuff and you stop them. You raid their bases, etc. Although one question I have is why all the grunts have that stupid bowl cut and dyed their hair blue. Oh, and his crew, honestly, are actually pretty hot. On a darker note, they do some pretty messed up stuff, while also accomplishing quite a bit too. They even managed to capture a few legendary Pokemon, Mesprit, Uxie, and Asleep, and then experiment on them, with their own scientists saying what they did was messed up. But in my opinion, the most unsettling thing about Team Galactic is how much they feel like a cult. The Grunts are told that they're gonna rule the world and get everything they ever wanted. Meanwhile, Cyrus sees his own followers as tools he's using to achieve his own selfish goals. Then there's the climactic showdown at Mount Coronet. Team Galactic invades the area and make their way to Spear Pillar to summon two of the four most powerful legendary Pokemon in the series, Dialga and Palkia, the gods of time and space, which he plans to use to erase the current universe or replace it with one without spirit or emotion. You get to fight a cool double battle against Commander Mars and Jupiter with Fairy on your side, and then the Pokemon League champion Cynthia shows up. You meet her quite a few times before this, kind of like Steven. She helps you out and is a great character overall. She's tough and intelligent, but a nice person. But enough about her, let's get back to the story. Cyrus uses the red chain created by the legendary lake Pokemon he captured to get Dialga and Palkia to recreate the universe. However, something terrifying happens. A shadowy entity comes to stop him. This is the second most powerful being in the Pokemon universe after Arceus himself, Giratina. And I love how Cyrus doesn't seem to be scared until the last second, that is, when Giratina takes him back to his own realm. This is the Distortion World, an odd place. Not exactly creepy or unnerving, well, a little bit I guess, but disorienting and confusing. There's these platforms that move in a confusing way, there's upside down gravity, and these puzzles with the Lake Guardians helping you out. You also find and fight Cyrus for the final time. And still, Cyrus doesn't seem to be scared of Giratina or his situation, and decides to stay in the Distortion World. I mean, at least he's gonna be happy in a place like this without emotion or spirit, so I guess he got his wish in the end after all. After that, you finally get to capture Giratina, the closest equivalent to Hades in the Pokemon world. And no, he's not the equivalent of the devil. Giratina isn't evil, he brings necessary balance to the world, and the only thing he has in common with the devil is being banished, so I think he gets too bad of a rap that he doesn't deserve. Moving on, this whole Distortion World saga is only in Platinum. In Diamond, you just fight Dialga. In Pearl, you only fight Palkia. And, those two are much easier to catch than Giratina, so thank God Empoleon is part Steel type. After leaving the Distortion World, you could actually capture the Lake Trio now too if you wanted to, although I held off on doing that until after I beat the Elite Four. Speaking of which, Sinnoh's Elite Four has gotta be one of my favorite Elite Fours in the series. Before doing anything, be sure to grind until your party's at least in the mid-level 50s, or else this is gonna be a nightmare. Well, to be honest, it's a nightmare anyway, even while you're sufficiently leveled. So, yeah. We don't start off too hard. Aaron is a bug-type user, and as such, he goes down pretty easily. Bertha and her ground types put up a decent fight, but also go down pretty easily, as long as you have a grass or water type, or another ground type user, Quake. Third up is Flint, a fire type user whose entire personality is based off fire and heat. A water type will destroy his whole team. And lastly is Lucia, and her team are all psychic types. They're not hard to take out, but do a lot of damage. Once the player makes it past all of that, the greatest Pokemon champion of all time lies on the floor above, waiting for their challenge. The fight against Cynthia is awesome. Like I said earlier, her showing up throughout the whole game lets the player know her and get used to her, and look forward to this. Overall, she is ranked as most people's favorite champion in the series, and no, it's not just because she's hot, although, I mean, that does play a big part in it, but there's other reasons. Like how her team is ridiculously strong, not just high level, but varied in typing and moves. Most of her Pokemon have moves to back up their weaknesses, like her Milotic knowing Ice Spin to cover up its weakness to grass, or you have her Lucario who knows Stone Edge to cover its weakness to fire. Her strongest Pokemon of all is her Garchomp. It's level 62, is fast, and knows Earthquake to counter its weakness to Ice, and Dragon Rush to cover its weakness to Dragon. The thing is though, that Dragon Rush has a 25% chance of missing, and with some luck, I was able to get some hits in with Dragon Claw with my own Garchomp, and down it went. Once your Garchomp goes down, the fight gets much easier, although still pretty difficult. Cynthia's Spirit Tomb isn't weak to anything, yet goes down the fastest out of her whole team. Her Togekiss is just annoying. Her Milotic spams Mirror Coat, and her Roserade can poison your whole team. But a fire type takes it out so fast that it's not really much of a concern. Lastly is her Lucario. It's fast, hits hard, knows extreme speed, which screwed me over so much. While my Infernape didn't make it through it, my Garchomp avenged it. And with that, Cynthia is beaten, and like every other champion, so far, excluding Blue at least, she loved the battle, with no sign of being upset at her loss. Rowan comes in to congratulate the player on their victory, and joins the two as the player and their team are added to the Hall of Fame, drawing this adventure to a close. But upon reopening your save file, a new one begins. Sinnoh has so much bonus content, more than any other game in the series up to this point, excluding maybe Crystal. First, let's go over the new legendaries you can get after beating the main story, and oh boy, are there a lot of them! Although first, I should mention a Lake Trio. After beating Giratina, you can visit caves throughout Sinnoh and capture Uxie and Asleep. Mesprit, though, leaves a cave to wander the land as a roaming legendary. Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with what roaming legendaries are, they're basically legendaries that wander around a certain route in the tall grass. Whichever route they're on is random, and it changes every time the player enters a new one. Now, in previous games, there is no easy way to track them down, but at least in this game, there's a new Poketech app that comes quite handy in knowing where they are. That's not it though, because they run away after only one turn, so you can only do a little bit of damage each turn, until they finally get down to red after a good amount of turns. And then their capture rate is super low, so it takes forever to finally catch them. Quick Balls and Dust Balls are your friends. This would be a good Pokemon to use your Master Ball on, only Platinum has 5 roaming legendaries. Mesprit, Cresselia, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. Needless to say, I spent a good couple of hours doing this, and tracking them all down to catch them. On the positive side of things though, after you beat the game, you can now visit the Battle Zone. Here lies the Battle Frontier. Many more strong trainers to fight against, and the Battleground. In the Battleground, it's possible to rematch 3 gym leaders a day, which is a huge improvement over the way it was in Emerald, where I spent hours trying to get a single gym leader rematch, but nothing. When I was writing the script for Emerald, I assumed that by the end I'll be able to at least get 1 gym leader, but I spent a good, I don't know how many, 6 hours playing the game after I beat it to try to get a gym leader rematch? I mean, I was grinding for Steven too, but I got nothing. Gym leader rematches in Emerald are just so bad. But in this game, they're much better. One last area of interest in the Battle Zone is Mount Stark, where you take down the last of Team Galactic, where the rest of them either quit or get arrested. It's also home to another legendary, Heatron, who is one of the most forgettable in this series if I'm being honest. Yet another legendary can be found in Snow Point, but to get to it, the player has to transfer Regice, Regirock, and Registeel from a Gen 3 game. If you bring all of them into the temple, it brings a mysterious statue to life. This is Regigaius, who sucks. First off, he's only level 1, at least in Platinum, and 2, his ability halves his attack and speed for the first few turns of battle. And finally, at long last, at Mount Coronet, you can finally capture Dialga and Palkia, bringing Platinum's legendary count to 12. Well, I mean, if you count special event Pokemon, it'd be up to 18, I think. For one last final challenge, to truly draw things to a close, you can rematch the Elite Four, only this time they're all higher level. Much higher level. In fact, because of all the grinding I did for this final fight, my team here is the strongest Pokemon team I have ever assembled throughout all my years of playing the franchise, which isn't very impressive honestly, but I thought I'd throw that out there. Cynthia is even stronger than she was before, her Pokemon being in the level 70s. Although, just like with Red, it's doable to beat her team with a low-level team, at least in the 60s, if you have some strong items and strong moves. Regardless, I think it's one of the best fights in the series like before, and the perfect thing to end the adventure off on. And that was Pokemon Platinum, which I honestly forgot how good it was until I replayed it. Maybe it was just because it wasn't a good time in my life, or maybe because of playing Diamond instead of Platinum, but I had so much more fun this time around. Gen 4 added a lot of cool elements, some great areas to explore, great characters, a decent story of some serious threats, and one of the best final fights in the history of the series. Unfortunately, from what I've heard from people, its remake Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl weren't as good of remakes compared to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which is kind of disappointing. Either way though, this generation is worth checking out if you haven't already. Sure, it hasn't aged as well as others, but it's still a great game. Speaking of great games though, I really hope Scarlet and Violet are gonna be good. It looked pretty good though, so I can't wait to play them. I don't know, I haven't really paid attention to what other people have said. I mean, there's some cool stuff in it. I don't know, a lot of people are just critical of a lot of stuff. So I'm kind of skeptical about some stuff, so I'll see you all later anyway, everyone. Well, the people have spoken. It's time for me to finally cover the game you guys have been asking for ever since I started making Pokemon videos. Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And for good reason. This game is seen as one of the greatest, if not the greatest Pokemon game of all time, as well as one of the best remakes of all time. Which is saying something because I already loved Gold, Silver, and Crystal in their 8-bit glory. But I have a confession to make. Despite its high praise, my love of Gen 2, and all the new additions I've heard of, until now, I have actually never played Heart Gold Soul Silver. Why? Well, for one, the price these carts go for on eBay. But also because I have a weird tendency to not want to replay games for years after my last playthrough, even if it is a remake. But it's been 2 years since I made my Crystal video, and after the huge view count I got along with the countless requests I've gotten for this video, I think it's about time I finally cover it. You know what time it is? That's right, intro time. In line with basically every Pokemon DS game, we get an awesome, somewhat 3D one. It's cheerful but ominous, has a lot of cool detailed sprites of the main cast, and the music playing changes rapidly, with many motif references, followed by a 3D model of either Ho-Oh or Lugia, depending on what version you're playing. And to spice things up, I went with Soul Silver, since I usually play the first version of a Pokemon game, like Red or Gold first. Following that good start, we get to choose our avatar. Gold returns as the male player. Wait, I'm sorry, Ethan. Seriously, Gold is such a cooler sounding name. I mean, imagine Red being named Bob or something. Chris has sadly gotten a boot, being replaced with a new girl, Lyra, who may have the coolest hat out of the main cast. Like seriously, that thing looks cool, and I want to wear it. Well, I mean, not really, but I kinda do. In a similar vein to May/Brendan, or Lucas/Dawn, whichever character you don't play as still appears in the game, albeit playing a very small role, simply being the guy or girl next door, teaching a player how to catch Pokemon, giving them a few things here and there. A small change, but a welcome one. Silver, on the other hand, is the way he was in Gen 2, a delinquent, hot-headed jerk. However, this game adds a lot more to his story, and overall character development. You get to fight double battles with him, and even tries to return his stolen starter back to Professor Elm, only for him to forgive Silver. And we get confirmation that Giovanni is his father, for a special event. The player can use Selby to travel back in time to 3 years before. Giovanni basically abandons his son after Team Rocket disbands, and goes into hiding to try to gather more strength to rebuild Team Rocket. Silver sees his father as weak, relying on the power of many to do his bidding, while he's beaten by a mere child. This shaped his whole ideology, and it's why he strives to be as strong as he can be on his own. I'll say it again, Silver is my favorite rival after possibly Blue. He feels like a true rival, and a central part of the story, not some minor character that you forget about. Gold/Lyra actively make them a better person, and with each interaction, they become less and less corrupt, until they finally become a true friend. I don't think we're gonna see another rival like Silver ever again, and I love the way Heart Gold Soul Silver made him even better. Like with my Black 2 White 2 video, here I'm mostly gonna focus on what's different or new. So if you want a full rundown on Johto as a whole, go check out my Gen 2 video first. Graphically, Heart Gold Soul Silver is much better, from Pokemon sprites, menu icons, overall graphics, all that. I mean, it's pretty obvious to everyone that has eyes. I don't really know why I felt the need to explain it to all of you like you're 3-year-olds, but anyway, I feel that all the audio and visual upgrades have improved the overall theme of Johto a lot. It's a unique region, being rural along with a greater focus on Japanese traditions and culture, at least compared to the other regions based on Japan. It's like if they made another Pokemon region based on the US, but instead of being metropolitan, like Unova, which is based on New York, we got something based on Kansas, or New England or something. With the greater graphical capabilities of the DS, areas now better capture this feel, from more aesthetic buildings, to the new instruments and songs, and all the extra detail in certain spots. The original Game Boy Color games did have a strong rural Japanese vibe, but here it's in full force. Overall, I love the way this game looks. I feel that Gens 3 through 5 was when the series peaked in visuals. Well, I mean in gameplay too, but anyway. Everything is so colorful, the sprites look great, and while not everything is fully animated like in Black and White, it's right behind there in terms of presentation. You even have these little eye catchers when entering certain areas, enriching the atmosphere. Although the Gen 2 titles had their own charm, and some designs I liked more. Most of all, Ethan/Gold's design. He seems so much cooler, and I liked his color scheme more. But at the same time, I mean, he kind of looked pretty similar to Red, so I can see why they changed it. Well, that, and also, on top of that, I mean, in a lot of the artwork, he looked a lot more like in-game he does in Heart Gold Soul Silver. It's just limitations of the console that limited his color scheme. I don't know if that's true. It's kind of weird to think about, because like in a lot of concept art, he wears yellow and black, and then in the actual game, he's wearing red. But if anyone knows the actual reason, let me know. Audio-wise, I was honestly kind of impressed with how faithful these songs are, while using more advanced hardware. Take New Bark for instance. Towards the end of the loop, you get this part. I love this part of this song, and I thought that its tone just couldn't be replicated, that it was just one of those songs that only sounded good with chiptune. Well, I was wrong, because listen how they recreated it. While not exactly the same, it replicates the same feel. All the other instruments stop playing for a few seconds, leaving the piano the only thing playing. Most other Johto tracks are just as faithful, with quite a few like the Ruins of Elf even sounding quite a bit better than they did before. The only big disappointment for me is the Wild Encounter theme. While they did the best they could, I don't know, it lacks the same intense feel the original did. And lastly is a detail that I don't often hear discussed when talking about this game: the sounds of water. Sure, it sounds like a small thing, but this enhances the atmosphere quite a bit, making caves or the coast feel a lot more immersive. Then of course are the many mechanics introduced in Gen 3 and 4, since this is technically a Gen 4 game, like abilities, new moves, automatically changing Pokemon boxes when they're full, running with B, and a lot of other stuff that I really feel future me editing this part of the video really won't appreciate current me listing and having to dig for like 50 hours of footage to find. One of the cooler additions is having Pokemon follow you. If a Pokemon at the top of your party walks behind a player, and you can interact with them to see what they're feeling, and during certain moments, your lead Pokemon can play a very small part in a cutscene. While this feature is in other games, it's never quite to the same scale or with the same freedom. Speaking of walking, there's the Pokewalker. This device was bundled with every copy of the game. The Pokewalker is its own primitive handheld console, meant to be taken along with the player on walks. It keeps tracks of how many steps you take, and then gives out rewards. You can catch Pokemon, get items, and even transfer a team member from the DS onto the Pokewalker, and gain XP from walking. It sounds like a really cool device. Unfortunately though, I don't have one. My copy already cost an amount that I really don't want to disclose, and these things go for like $50 on eBay. But if you really want me to talk about it, like the video, subscribe, comment, share this video with your friends, and if it gets a lot of watch time, maybe this can make enough money to where I can afford one off of eBay, and then I can make a separate video on it, because until then, I am kind of broke right now, so please forgive me. HMs come back as well, and even worse than in the original games, boosting the amount of them from 7 to 8. 5 HMs is alright, but 8 is a third of your party's moveset, forcing you to use HM slaves, which is annoying at times. Plus, if you count Flash, which is no longer an HM but a TM, it can be 9, although you only use it a few times, but those few times are like catching some legendary Pokemon, so yeah, definitely one of the few things that is worse in the remakes than the original games. Apricorns have been improved upon in a few ways. First of all, you get a separate box to store them in, and second, Kurt can make more than one Apricorn a day. You can turn any amount of a type into balls as long as you have them on you. So if you have 30 black Apricorns, you get 30 heavy balls the next day. Before, it was slow and tedious to get Kurt's balls, to the point of where they're almost useless. I even caught Lugia in a heavy ball. Thank you for lending me your balls, Kurt. Berries are no longer found in trees, but the player still gets to grow them in berry pots. Only 4 berries can be grown at a time, yet you can take the pots out of the bag to water them at any time anywhere, which is way more convenient. Getting berries in the first place is a little tough though. There's the goldenrod lottery, or your mother calling you every 5 minutes to tell you she's used your money to buy something. Usually berries, and speaking of that, there is a lot of times where she calls you, like, it gets ridiculous. So, another thing I feel like the original games were better on, but moving on. Unlike Gold, Silver, and Crystal, these games don't use save batteries. Instead, they use the DS's internal clock to set time. Them going dry and losing your save data was such a big problem with the original Game Boy games. And out of every aspect the remakes fixed, I'd say this was the biggest. I mean, not that Nintendo could have even continued this if they wanted to. It's not like a battery would fit inside a DS card or anything, but seriously, I worry so much about all my old Pokemon games with batteries, and just having them go dead. My Crystal battery, I mean, it still works, even though it's been 5 years, and I can back it up, but still. This is probably the best thing about the remakes. A couple of new areas have been added to Johto: the Safari Zone, Battle Frontier, Pokeathlon, and more. The Pokeathlon is the most unique, containing various minigames you play with the touchscreen, almost feeling like Mario Party in a way. And I suck at it, to say the least. I'm not the biggest fan of side modes in Pokemon games, mostly since by the time I finally check them out, I've already done everything else there is to do, and I'm usually pretty tired of the game. But if you enjoyed the contests and tournaments of earlier games, you'll like these too. And of course, there are tons of prizes, like TMs of really great moves, that I will probably never take the time to earn BP for. Remember the fuzzy pickle guy from Earthbound? Well, this title has its own photographer, named Cameron. While not as cool as the Fuzzy Pickle guy, it's still a neat addition, and it's a great way to preserve snapshots of your team throughout the game if you don't record any footage like me. Alright, now it's time for me to talk about my team. In my Crystal video, I chose Totodile for my starter, so this time, I wanted to see if I could get both Cyndaquil and Chikorita for this video. My initial plan was to do what I always did, find a used copy where someone already had one of them, trade it over to my Platinum cart, and yes, you can actually trade between the Sinnoh games in this with no strings attached, which is really nice. But anyway, trade the Pokemon over to that and start a new save. If it's too strong, breed another. Then start my new save, and then I picked the Ever starter. I was looking at listings of Soul Silver all over eBay, and asking sellers about it. Well, one got back to me, and said he was shiny hunting, got a shiny Chikorita, started a run, then got bored around the first gym and quit. When I saw this picture, I immediately bought the listing. When it got here, I opened her file, only to see no shiny Chikorita. Thankfully, it was there, just in the PC for some odd reason. I traded it over, chose Cyndaquil, then traded it back, and had myself 2 starters and a free shiny Pokemon. What is really weird about the whole situation is that the buyer never really mentioned it on the listing. Nowhere did it mention he had a shiny Chikorita, which seems like an odd thing to do because I'm sure a lot of people would spend extra just to have one. Like, imagine if someone bought it and then started a new save file without checking it first. Or maybe they did, but didn't make sure to look in the PC. Moral of the story? Always be sure to check a previous owner's save file whenever you buy a used Pokemon game. Disregarding the whole shiny thing, this was my first time I ever used Meganium before. I kept hearing about how much they sucked, but mine, while not the best starter ever, wasn't all that bad. A lot of people don't recommend picking Chikorita because it's weak to the first 2 gyms. If you have multiple starters though, it's not too bad. Plus, there are a lot more moves that Meganium can learn now in the remakes compared to the original. Even then though, there's still a lot of times where he kinda sucked. Then of course, I have my Typhlosion, and yes, I got the name right this time. I'm sorry about all the names I mispronounced in previous videos, like how I called Sceptile, Skeptile, or Typhlosion, Typlosion. Dyslexia is a bitch. Like, as a kid, I called Bowser Browser, even though there's obviously no R in his name. Typhlosion is pretty good, no dual typing, but has strong fire type moves and is pretty fast. My Slowpoke though, really sucked. At least until it finally evolved into Slowbro. And now, since Emerald, I have named a psychic member of each of my teams after Mother PSI users. Kumatora the Gardevoir, Puvage Lead, Nesty Espeon, Lucas the Ranunculus, Paula the Meowstic, and I just realized in my X and Y video I called it Meowistic. Dyslexia again is a bitch. Anna the Siliglyph, and I hope I actually pronounced that right. And now Ninten the Slowbro. Maybe I'll keep this tradition up with later Pokemon playthroughs and name them after non-PSI using Mother characters. Honestly, I have no idea. Or maybe I can name them like, I don't know, after, but Travis or some other fan-made Mother games, or like Gygus, I don't know. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. Anyway, I had a Heracross too. I've never used one before, since I didn't know how to catch one. It's my first Bug-type team member, and dual fighting type as well, which was able to destroy Whitney. My Togekiss was also pretty decent, learning tons of great moves. Unfortunately, to evolve it, you need a shiny stone, which you can't get until very late into the game, unless you trade one over like I did. Once I did though, Togekiss was my best team member, being able to tank strong attacks and always saving the day from really strong foes the rest of my team failed to beat. Air Slash and Yawn are a deadly combo. And lastly was my Dragonite. After beating Claire, the Elders give you a special Dratini that knows extreme speed. I've used Dragonite on pretty much all my Johto teams. with my Crystal team for a video being the exception. Sure, it's a bit of a drag, leveling it up just before the Elite Four, and it takes a long time to fully evolve, but when it does, it's a beast, and can learn tons of great moves. The gym leaders are the same as they were before, albeit changed a little. Some hand out different TMs, or have to be found in a certain location before they can be fought, and their gyms have been redesigned. Best of all though, gym leaders can be refought, although it's a little bit more complicated than, let's say, Platinum. After beating the Elite Four, you can find gym leaders away from their gyms, where you can get their phone number. The catch is that they're only away at certain times of day, on certain days of the week. While this does make the world feel more immersive, it's frankly annoying, as you have a brief time window each week to find each gym leader and get their numbers. And on top of that, to finally rematch them, you have to call them first, and they can only be called at certain times and certain days of the week too. Then they show up in the dojo in Saffron, and now can be refought. Once you have every gym leader's number though, the system isn't so bad, since there's almost always going to be one gym leader who can be called up for a rematch at a particular time. Plus, you can also call them up again and again, as long as it's still that certain time of the week. Also, changing the DS's clock helps a bit. By doing so, you get a penalty that lasts until the clock strikes midnight. So to get around that, set the clock to 11:59 the day before, and wait a little bit until the time you need. If you cheat, it's not all that much of a deal to meet these time windows. A little annoying for sure, just not a huge deal. And they stay in the dojo forever, at least until you beat them, which is nice. I hate that I had to complain so much about all of this, because it's awesome. And overall, the best gym leader rematch system, with the exception of Platinum. Regular trainer matches are improved too. You have unlimited space to store numbers, their mons raise in levels, and can be called to ask for a fight. Although, once again, there's a specific time window for each trainer. Also, you get basically no matches until having 7 gym badges. Still though, overall, a much better system than Gen 2's. Oh, and remember how much of a pain Whitney is? Well, this time, I thought to get prepared. I ground Goku all the way up to level 20 so he'd learn Break. This was overkill, however. Goku beat the shit out of her melt tank. It only took like 2 blows for it to faint. I even spent a whole hour grinding my team just in case he fainted. Needless to say, I went a little overboard. I think in this case, however, Whitney's reaction is a little bit more justified. I mean, imagine winning against so many trainers, and one day this kid with his muscled up bug beats it with 1 or 2 punches. Whitney at least gets some character development. When you beat her in a rematch, she's no longer a sore loser, and neither is Claire. While these are remakes of Gold and Silver specifically, tons of elements exclusive to Crystal return as well, the special Dratini, and Usain tracking down Suicune. Although, Suicune is caught a bit differently, being encountered in Kanto instead of the Bell Tower. Still, thank God they're not a roamer. Also, in what may be the luckiest moment of my entire life, I caught a Raikou the first time I encountered them, at full health with one quick ball. If you've ever seen Chiga Conroy's Let's Play of Crystal and his reaction when he found a shiny coughing, that's what I sounded like here. And I even uploaded the clip to YouTube, and as of recording this has like 20,000 views, and has made me like $20, which honestly is probably even better than catching with 1 quick ball. Like, I was not expecting that clip to get so many views, and hey, maybe by the time I finish this video, I'm gonna add it in the end screen, so maybe a lot of you watching this right now came here because of that video and its end screen, I don't know. But anyway, many characters now have a bigger role in the story, like the Kimono Sisters. Remember how smitten I was over them in my Crystal video? Well, if only I knew the role they played in the remakes. You meet most of his sisters one by one during the story, kind of like how Cynthia did in Sinnoh. Zuki is first met in Violet City. Nako gets lost in Elix Forest. You rescue Miki from a Team Rocket grunt. Cuny runs into you during Team Rocket's attack on the radio tower. And you free Sayo when she gets frozen in the ice bath. After beating Claire, Professor L gives you a Master Ball and tells the player that the girls have been looking for you. In the dance feeder, you fight them one by one, just like you do in the original games. Only this time, they are way higher leveled. Even Silver gets his ass beat by them. After this, they give you a special item that either lets you enter the Bell Tower to fight Ho-Oh, or the Whirl Islands to fight Lugia and set off there. They then give a special ceremony which awakens the legendary Pokemon. The Kimono Girls being a bigger deal, honestly, may be my favorite change. The dance feeder has always been my favorite part of the original game. The music, how they all have their own Eevee evolutions, and most of all, me being a, teenage boy. It's too bad though that no one really ever talks about them. After collecting all the Johto badges and catching the box legendary, it's time to beat the Elite Four. And you actually have to catch it. Unlike the originals, the story doesn't progress until you do so. Anyway, a nice change is the ability to fly between Kanto and Johto on the map screen, so you can travel back to other towns from the Pokemon League and back easily. The Elite Four are the same as before, only I had a way harder time than I did with them in Crystal. Not only was I more underleveled, I didn't have any ice on my team, which made Lance a pain in the ass. Seriously though, screw his Dragonite with Outrage and his full restores. Upon beating Lance and becoming the champion, we get to explore Kanto. It still goes by pretty fast, although there are some areas that weren't in Gen 2, mostly because of limited storage space, like Cerulean Cave. And what would this cave be without Mewtwo? That's right, Mewtwo comes back as a legendary, as do Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. Hoenn legendaries return too. In Heart Gold, you get Kyogre and Latias, and in Soul Silver, you get Latios and Groudon. And if you trade over Groudon or Kyogre from the other game, you can catch a Rayquaza too. I, however, did not. Latios/Latias is a roamer again, unfortunately. And even worse, they can only be found in Kanto, meaning you can't hunt for them, Entei and Raikou at the same time. All in all though, the roamers didn't give me too much trouble compared to Platinum or Crystal. And lastly is the other box legendary, which in my case was Ho-Oh. Not only did the devs let you get Kanto and Hoenn legendaries, but starters too. Oak gives you one, and Steven Stone gives you the other. Too bad it's the very late post-game by the time you get one. But hey, it's the thought that counts. Well, there's not much else to do, except take on the ultimate final fights. First, the Elite Four have gotten a lot stronger, and most of all, Lance. God does he suck, the level jump here is crazy. Even so, it's nothing compared to the final fight with Red. Heart Gold and Soul Silver is a fantastic game, and one of the greatest gaming remakes of all time. But if there's one flaw with it that wasn't fixed from before, it's grinding. I haven't really talked about it up to this point because you really don't need to grind all that often, and a few times you do, you have tons of trainers to fight. But with the trainer rematch system being so ingrained with the clock cycle, it becomes a huge pain to grind levels. Sometimes your only option is to fight wild Pokemon. Even then, it usually doesn't take that long to get stronger, with two exceptions. The first time you beat the Elite Four, and for Red, especially Red. I fought every trainer multiple times. I rematched tons of gym leaders, and even then, when I faced Red, I was only in the mid-60s, while his mons were in the level 80s. Yeah, not only did the devs not really fix the grinding system that much, they also decided to raise his team's levels just because. If you were to grind to reach Red's level, it would take hours and hours. Even refighting gym leaders like 20 times, or taking on the Elite Four again and again, doesn't really make it any faster, since while they do give out a bit more XP, each Pokemon takes a lot longer to beat. It's so bad that it's actually a common thing for players to trade their teams over to Platinum and then grind them there, of how much easier it is to do so, not to mention the added XP traded Pokemon get. I, however, decided to wing it like I always do, and take on Red with little grinding at all. I was about 20 levels below him, but if you're smart, he can be taken out super under-leveled, just like before. The top of Mount Silver is now covered in a thick snow, which 1, makes walking up to Red much more intense, and 2, it causes a hail that damages Pokemon. All of his Mons except for Lapras take damage from it, meaning as long as your team can withstand a single attack, you can just spam Hyper Potions until the hail makes them faint. Most of his team is the exact same as before, with the exception of his Lapras, which replaces his Espeon. I'm unsure why exactly they decided to swap it, since it gives his team better coverage, but it's fine with me. I guess since Lapras does have Psychic, he still has that covered. And speaking of coverage, his Mons now have different moves, like his Charizard having Dragon Claw, meaning I couldn't use my Dragonite to easily take him on. His Lapras, Blastoise, Snorlax, they all have Blizzard, and with the hail, it no longer has a small chance of missing and pretty much always hits you unless you use a move like Mud Slap or Sand Attack or something. Now consider that like half my team was weak to Ice, so yeah, that really sucked. Even then, I was honestly surprised at how well my team was tanking Red's attacks and dealing damage. Zenkai even survived some blizzards, which is something I did not expect. Red has also reclaimed the title of having the highest leveled Pokemon team, with his level 88 Pikachu. A level 88 Pikachu is still a level 88 Pikachu though. A couple of ground moves and it's toast. His Snorlax though is way easier to take on. For one reason, it doesn't know rest. Oh god, did that suck before. Even with Curse it was a pain. I also actually had some fighting on my team as well, solving both this and the Whitney Miltank problem in a few punches. Surprisingly though, his Venusaur was probably the hardest to take down. Even Overheat couldn't one-shot it, and his Sludge Bomb was even stronger than you'd think. All in all, it's still a great fight. My heart always pumps so fast when you walk up to him in battle. The preparation, the feeling of never being strong enough, fighting the previous main character, and the awesome feeling when you finally win. I love it so much. And that was Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Overall, I had a great time playing it. It's the first time in years where I managed to reach the 50-hour mark in under 2 weeks in a game. Refighting the gym leaders, the appealing graphics, new legendaries, and maybe most of all, being remakes of my second favorite Pokemon game. I kind of regret not checking it out sooner. At the same time though, maybe I needed to experience something as good as this at a time like this. As a surprise to nobody, it's my favorite Pokemon game on the DS. Now for a possibly unpopular opinion. I think I like Crystal a bit more, mostly just because of nostalgia, and there's nothing I can really do to change that. But I don't know, the original games had a certain soul that the remakes don't really have. It's kind of hard to describe exactly what I'm talking about. The best example I could come up with is to have you imagine Lost Silver, and now imagine it being based on Heart Gold Soul Silver. And it doesn't really work as well now, does it? My weird, trivial opinions aside, from a more objective point of view, Heart Gold and Soul Silver are way better. It's not even close. They're perfect remakes, as well as maybe the best games in a series. In my Black 2 White 2 video, I gave that game the title of the best Pokemon installment. Well, I'm taking it away and giving it to Heart Gold Soul Silver. While it might not have the same cool side modes or fancy animation, you get a great main story, post-game, and fun characters. I mean, what more could you ask for? Well, other than maybe a slightly better rematch system and ability to grind, but other than that, it's perfect. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. These huge Pokemon retrospectives are never easy to make, so I'd appreciate it if you guys could give the video a like, subscribe, comment below, and watch my other videos. If you want to see a whole rundown on Johto as a whole, be sure to check out my Crystal video. And if you have any requests for other Pokemon games, tell me in the comments. I'm also thinking of putting this along with my other Pokemon DS videos into a compilation, and I will probably be too lazy to cut out the last parts of the video, so if you're watching that and are confused about what the hell is going on, I'm sorry. Anyway, until next time, everyone. There's a lot of debate on what the best Pokemon generation is. Gen 1 is the game that the most people started off with, and as such, one people have the most nostalgia for. And while it is a great game, if we're going by a modern perspective without any rose-tinted glasses, it definitely wouldn't be viewed as the greatest game in the series with all its flaws and rough edges. Then there's Gen 2, which seems to be the game that the most people consider their favorite, at least if we go by Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It polished the rough edges of Red and Blue and improved upon pretty much every gameplay aspect. It also came out not too long after Gen 1. So it's still pretty nostalgic to that generation, and for a lot, the experience of playing a sequel that completely blew the original out of the water is one that can never be topped. Next came Gen 3. It once again improved upon almost everything, although I don't hear as many people praise it as much as Gen 2 at least, but it's my favorite Pokemon game. After that, there is Gen 4, which I don't see as many people calling it their favorite, but its online play and story were widely praised. Well, I mean, if you count Heart Gold and Soul Silver, I guess it is the most praised generation. But anyway, Gen 5. Gen 5 was the first Pokemon game to be widely unpopular when it came out, and only recently have fans been given the love it deserves. You see, while it did improve upon a crap ton like each previous generation before it, it also made a lot of changes that weren't widely received at the time, but now give the game a very distinct experience than any other in the franchise. Even more bizarre was how it's the first Pokemon game not to have a third version, just two standard editions, Pokemon Black and Pokemon White, and eventually something that hasn't been seen in the series since, a pair of sequels, Pokemon Black 2 and Pokemon White 2. A lot of people debate if these count as their own separate games or not, but I'm not here to discuss that today. I actually plan to cover Black 2 and White 2 in their own video someday, and this video will only be about the original Black and White. Without further ado though, let's dive into these games and see what all the fuss is about. And I also, by the way, I broke my old mic, so I had to get a new one, and I'm probably gonna sound a bit different in this video. And I don't have this new mic worked out quite yet, so the audio quality might not be the best. But with that out of the way, let's begin. Just the intro should be a sign that this isn't going to be your typical Pokemon adventure. Instead of the usual happy opening cutscene that shows off new Pokemon and pumps you up, this one is more in line with something you'd see in Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy. It shows what appears to be the coronation of a young boy, and all these strange, out of place looking people for a Pokemon game, but you know what? It's a nice change of pace. So to start off, one thing I will complain about is with save files. You see, you can't overwrite save files, and if you start a new game without deleting the old save file, there's no way to save. And to even delete an old save file, you need to press up, B, and select at the same time, so yeah, that's a bit convoluted. That minor inconvenience is quickly forgiven by me, as when you start a new save file, you see this game's Pokemon professor for the first time. This is Professor Juniper, and do I even need to say anything? She's smoking hot.
not too young, but not too old, incredibly intelligent, doesn't actually exist, just my type. Honestly, Professor Juniper is probably the hottest female character in the series in my opinion, after maybe Cynthia. Yeah, I suspect a few people watching this are probably cringing right now, but I haven't gotten any negative comments about me being thirsty. But I've gotten dozens over my voice and mispronunciations and stuff, so I'm just gonna assume everyone doesn't care. And if you do, well, I'm sorry. I really hate myself.
My first aside, we're then taken to the house of our main character, Hilbert. Not exactly the greatest name for a main character, to be frank, although his female counterpart's name is Hilda, which sounds a bit less stupid. Today though is the day that the protagonists and their friends get their first Pokemon. These two friends are your rivals. Yeah, that's right, you get two of them in this game. First, there's Chirin. He's the smarter, more experienced of the two, already knowing a lot about the world of Pokemon. He chooses the starter that's super effective against yours, overall being the more serious rival, closer to Blue or Silver. His character arc revolves around finding his purpose and meaning of what being the strongest entails, besides being the best. The second of the two, Bianca, is just as much of a newbie as Hilbert/Hilda. She picks a starter that's weak to whatever the player chose, and after May/Brendan, is the first friendly ally kind of rival. I mean, Barry was kind of that too, but she's just adorable. Her start of battle sprite has her struggling to get her Pokeballs out of her bag, she gets her Pokemon stolen, she's just too precious for this cruel world. Or the world of Pokemon, because it's not real. Just like my chances of getting a girlfriend. Her dad, on the other hand, doesn't like the idea of her going on a Pokemon journey, coming to stop her mid-journey, and the two have an emotional moment together. Now, what separates these two from the later rivals, and why I think they're the last awesome rivals in the series, is their well-written personalities and their part in the story. Speaking of which, this game's story is excellent. More on that later though. Sometimes we'll be helping the player get back some stolen Pokemon, and at others they'll be racing for the next gym badge. It's never a dull moment running into one of them. It's worth noting too that all three of them are 14. Quite a bit older than the standard 10 or 11 most protagonists are. In my opinion, Chirin and Bianca, again, are the last excellent rivals in Pokemon. Sure, I do like some of the later ones, but they're all either too one-dimensional or have very little screen time. Chirin and Bianca though add a lot to the story, have well-written personalities with character development, and even come back in a sequel with new roles. The region of this game, Unova, was the first one to take place in a place other than Japan, being based off United States, specifically the East Coast, and more specifically the Mid-Atlantic, and even more specifically New York, and even more specifically the New York City metropolitan area. Yeah, I've heard a lot of differing opinions of where exactly Unova took influence from, but we know New York at the very least for sure. Unova is a beautiful place, with so much grit and aesthetic fluff, and there are a few notable places that I want to take a look at. Castelia City is basically New York City, being the largest city of the region and possibly the largest in Pokemon in general after like Saffron. There are a number of buildings to explore, back alleys, dancers, along with a lot of people. The roads are full of people going about their day. None of them serve any real purpose, but it adds to the big city cheery atmosphere. Driftville City is just cool all around. Nimbasa City is just one big amusement park. The caves are massive and the routes are beautiful. I'd rank Unova pretty high in a ranking of Pokemon regions, probably around 3rd or 4th, although if it wasn't for nostalgia of Kanto, maybe higher. So for the starter Pokemon, they're meh, not really having great dual typing, with mediocre stats being a letdown to some. First there's Tepig, the fire type. It evolves into Pignite and then into Emboar. Its later evolutions are dual firefighting type, which was used twice in a row before as with Blaziken and Infernape. On top of that, it doesn't learn that good of fighting moves and is slow. Nearly every poll I've seen has Emboar at the bottom in popularity, and it's not even close. Slightly more popular, we have Snivy, the grass type starter. Although its evolution is a pretty raw deal compared to the likes of Charmander, who goes from a salamander to a dragon, or the plethora of Pokemon who gain dual typings after evolving. No, Snivy doesn't gain anything during its first evolution to Servine. but during its final evolution to Superior, the poor thing loses its legs. What, did God curse it for getting people to eat from a tree or something? Despite not having any legs, it has great speed, somehow, but its attack and special attack are pretty bad. This is the starter I chose during my first playthrough of Black a few years ago, while I chose a Tepic line when I played Black 2 a little bit after. And although most polls rank Superior higher than Embor, I found Embor more useful. Maybe it's because my team was overall just better and a lot higher level than Black 2, honestly I don't know. Gen 5's definitive starter is without a doubt Oshawott, which is what I went with for this playthrough. The Oshawott line might not have a dual typing, yet they have a good selection of moves, great stats all around, and their only weakness is speed. Oshawott's appearance changes while evolving, and it's kinda weird too. I mean, not as bad as Sniffy. It first evolves into D-Watt, which is still an otter-like creature, and then into its final evolution it evolves into Samurai. I mean, what's this thing supposed to be? An otter? A walrus? Who knows? Appearances aside, Samurott is great. Again, this is the line I went with for this playthrough, and now that I've used all three of them, yeah, I have to admit that Samurott is probably the best starter in most cases. Now, I could have done what I usually do for these videos, which is use breeding on previous save files to get all the starters, but I decided not to do that this time since I'm planning on doing that again for Black 2 and White 2 whenever I do make a video on that, so stay tuned for that, which is gonna be like 5 years from now, but stay tuned anyway. My other team members are pretty solid overall, which I'm glad of. For a while, I really sucked at building Pokemon teams. I never made sure to have enough type variety, would waste space with HMs, chose terrible Pokemon, and loved moves with 5 PP. It feels satisfying to have such an incredibly better team than I did my first playthrough, although it did take a while for it to come together. It wasn't until like the 3rd gym that I finally got my second party member, not until like the 6th when I had my final team. For these past few playthroughs, I've been trying to fill my team with some underrated Pokemon, or at least ones I hadn't used before. I decided to try Lilligant out because I saw it listed on some online article once about underrated Gen 5 Pokemon, and usually these articles aren't that trustworthy, although this one was right because I really enjoyed using Lilligant. I gave it quite a few moves throughout different points in the adventure besides the cliche high-powered grass moves like Leech Seed, Sleep Powder, Quiver Dance to raise special attack, etc. I'll even say that Lilligant was probably the most fun member of my team to fight with since I had to keep thinking of strategies instead of just spamming Razor Leaf or something. My Ranunculus took a long time to finally get good. For a while, the thing would die in 1 or 2 blows. And in this new tradition that I've come up with recently of naming my psychic types after mother characters, I did it again, this time Lucas. My Archeops became a pretty effective sweeper, as did my Hydreion. Although this thing takes forever to evolve, like it doesn't reach its first evolution until like level 50 and its final until 64. And my last team member is Chandelure. Dual Ghost Fire, has a sweet design, and I want to eat it for some reason. Those unfamiliar to Black and White might find it an odd coincidence that my whole party are all new to the game, with none from Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, or Sinnoh. In what might be the most unpopular decision of Gen 5, for the main story, the player can only catch the new Pokemon of the generation. It's only in the post-game that Pokemon from previous titles can be caught, leaving quite a few fans unsatisfied. On one hand, this limits your options from over 600 to a little over 100, if that. On the other hand, this does make the game feel very distinguished. Sometimes it gets old seeing the same Mons over and over, so a completely new roster for a while is a breath of fresh air. In a way, this might be the closest experience to how 90s kids felt playing Red and Blue for the first time. And all without pretty much any Gen 1 pandering. However, a lot of fans didn't think so deeply about any of this at the time. On top of that, while quite a few of the new Pokemon are great and interesting, there are a lot that aren't, like Vanillite, which is an ice cream cone, Trubbish, actual garbage, and... am I glad this isn't 2020 anymore? One thing I think all of us can agree on, or at least most of us, is just how good this game looks visually. Sprites look very polished, colorful, well detailed, and overall, just aesthetically pleasing. But the graphics aren't quite static in its top-down placement like you see in previous games, with a lot of different angles playing with a 3D perspective. In tight spaces, you'll see a lot of close-up shots on characters, while in various routes and cities, very tiny. It's one of those things you really don't think about too much, yet adds a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if the camera angles kept players' attention a bit longer. But battles get even better, as for the first time ever, the sprites are fully animated. Each Pokemon have their own animation loops, and once again, the camera angle changes constantly. Even the moves themselves look great, being very well animated and just looking cool. Oh, and we can't forget that rock and tune that plays when your health's low. Some people find it a bit annoying, and well, it kind of is. At the same time though, it's a great addition. It makes some hard battles feel a lot more tense. Now for the new stuff. And oh boy, is there a lot of it in black and white. The biggest new aspect, at least at the time of release, might be the C gear. Sometimes the cast uses it to communicate like Zoom, and the rest of the functions, well, I can't really use much of them because either A, they haven't worked since Nintendo shut down DS Wi-Fi, or B, they need other players to communicate locally to work, and I don't have any friends. A concept that never really came back after this game is the season cycle. Now, trying to implement new time-based mechanics besides the day and night cycle are nothing new. Gen 2 tried a weekly cycle, which had its issues. Just being too much and kind of annoying having to wait till certain days of the week to do certain things like find a move tutor. The season cycle, meanwhile, is both a little less annoying and more annoying at the same time. For one, not really much is impacted by it, other than the visuals, with there being 4 seasons, or because there are 4 seasons in the real world, so yeah, I don't know what I was going with in the script. Anyway, you got spring, summer, fall, and winter. It does add a bit of visual variety, and it adds a certain charm similar to the Animal Crossing series. Not only that, but each season doesn't last a whole 3 months, instead only 1, which definitely does make it easier to experience each season in a reasonable amount of time, although it does take away the real world element of the game's season lining up with the players. January, May, and September are spring, February, June, and October are summer, March, July, and November are fall, and April, August, and December are winter. So yeah, they don't really line up too well. The other problem I have with it is just I don't like how certain seasons look, especially winter. However, it is possible to change a season by tweaking the internal clock in the DS. And surprisingly, it doesn't mess up that much, unlike let's say Animal Crossing. Overall, the idea of seasons was a cool one, but ended up just not working too well. Another new feature that never appeared ever again in later titles are some new battle types. Double battles were pretty fun, so the devs thought that triple battles would be even better. Only no, they really don't work too well at all. There's too much happening all at once, only the center party member can attack every Pokemon on screen, and it's hard not to have at least one of your Pokemon faint. Speaking of which, that's another thing that gave this game its mixed reception. It can be kind of hard if you're not careful. First off, you can't rebattle trainers, meaning early on there's only a finite amount of money you can get. On top of that, the amount of XP points earned in battles correlates with how strong your Pokemon is. So if you have a high-leveled Pokemon, defeating low-level Pokemon will give less XP than ever before. However, if you're careful of spending money, and don't rotate between tons of different Pokemon, Black and White isn't as difficult as I've seen some claim it to be, at least for the main story. Plus, Nimbasa City has these stadiums full of trainers to fight that can be rebattled once a day, and they also rise in levels as the adventure goes on. Moving back to positive stuff, HMs and TMs have a couple of convenient tweaks. First, the amount of HM moves isn't too bad honestly, only 6. Surf, Fly, Strength, Cut, Waterfall, and Dive, the last 2 of which are hardly ever used. So more like 4. Well, I didn't even have Cut on my team too, so 3, and I didn't really need Strength either, so 2, and you don't technically need Fly, so 1. Way less than in Ruby and Sapphire or Diamond and Pearl, which have like 8. Even better, TMs can be used an infinite amount of times. So if you want to have a whole team of Jigglypuffs and no Psychic, well there you go. Then there's just the small things. little additions that help add to the experience, like seasoning on a lasagna. Like these doctors and nurses that act as healing points in certain long routes or dungeons to heal your team so you don't have to make the trek to a Pokemon Center. Or weather like snow or rain that relaxes the soul. Or all the stuff in Nimbasa City, like the Pokemon musical. And yeah, I only did it once to get footage for it, but I'm sure there are some people out there who really enjoyed it back in 2011. Gym leaders are another strong point of this game, with unique casts that each play their own role in the story instead of being fought once and forgotten. There are many times where they actually do their job of protecting a Nova and just seem a lot more professional. The first gym is an odd one. You see, instead of just one leader, this one has 3. There's Silent, who uses grass types, Chili, who uses fire types, and Cress, who uses water types. Which one the player fights is determined on what starter they chose, and the gym leader they fight is the one with the type advantage over their starter. Needless to say, this is a pretty intense battle. I remember when I attempted it for the first time a few years ago, I just kept losing over and over. Trying to level up, failing, trying again, and then still losing. What I didn't know at the time is that you can get an elemental monkey from this guy in the Dream Yard, but it also changes depending on what starter you chose. They'll always be super effective against a gym leader, but after that these monkeys become almost useless of how much they start sucking. The only other thing I have to say here is that the gym is a restaurant, and that's the thing about many of them in Unova. Instead of being a basic gym-like building with a little gimmick, many of them feel completely different and distinct, which is pretty cool. The next gym leader is Lenora. Her gym is a museum of sorts. She uses normal types and was actually the first black character in the franchise. After her is Berg, one of the few bug-type gym leaders, and out of all of them is the one who's the latest into the game, being third, while most others are first, maybe second. He's still insanely easy though, because most bug Pokemon kind of suck. I mean, I've never used a bug type in these videos so far, for a reason. And a few cool ones you can actually get are usually super hard to get anyway. Anyway, moving back on track, gym leader number 4 is Elisa, an electric type user who's a model in her spare time. Alright, I'm gonna drop a hot take here. I don't find her that attractive. I mean, at least compared to the goddess it's Juniper. I swear, I'm not being serious here. Well, mostly. She kinda kicked my ass too, since I didn't really have anything super effective against her at this point, except for like Arcan, but it's also weak to electric types. And her Pokemon also spam Volt Switch all the time. At the very least, her gym looks pretty cool. 5th up is Clay. This middle-aged dude pretending to be from the Wild West. I mean, come on, no one talks like that. He kind of reminds me of all those rich, upper-class dudes who pretend to be either cowboys or huntsmen whenever they run for public office. Like, stuff like that really pisses me off. This dude uses ground types, and as you can guess, I stomped hard. Following him is my favorite waifu after a professor, the flying type gym leader of Mistralton Gym, Skyla. She is cute, and I'm not gonna dwell for very long to make up for earlier, but seriously, she's cute. Next to last is Bryce, probably the least interesting Unova gym leader. He uses ice types, and the only other interesting thing I can think about regarding him is how in both this game, Gen 4 and Gen 2, they all had ice type gym leaders for SM gyms, which all came out on the DS in some way. It's too bad Black and White 2 broke this trend. The final gym leader is different between versions actually. In Black it's Drayden, and in White it's Iris. This is like the only one in the whole series that I've actually had to use items during battles with regular trainers. Then immediately afterwards I swept Iris's team in like 4 turns, so quite the letdown. Alright, now that I've gone over nearly every aspect of the game, from the gameplay to the gritty details, there is one I've saved for last. The number one reason why this game is loved by so many, the ingredient that makes it stand out like a sore thumb from other Pokemon installments. The story. Especially the villains, Team Plasma. These guys are fleshed out more than any other evil team, with what seemed like a reasonable idea at first. To free Pokemon from their trainers and let them decide their own fate. For years up to this point, the idea of free will for Pokemon was one of the most debated topics in the community, with the lead writer of the anime even coming up with an idea about a movie about a Spartacus-like Pokemon rebellion. This moral dilemma is brought up multiple times by different characters, each having their own views on the matter. In spite of such a noble goal, Team Plasma isn't behind using similar tactics to that of Team Rocket or Team Galactic, stealing, violence, etc. Above the grunts are the 7 sages, led by Geddes, and above him is their king, N. This dude is a really interesting character. He's encountered quite a few times early on in the game when you have no clue who he really is. N makes some remarks about how people and Pokemon must be separated, battles the player a few times, and most importantly, is very mysterious. The reveal is done perfectly too, as it's not this cliche betrayal moment. It takes place halfway through the game after you battle him in Nimbasa Town, and then he takes you on his Ferris wheel, a place where there's no way to get down until the ride's over, meaning that he could pretty much do to you whatever he wants. This whole scene perfectly conveys to the player who N is, while being the least dramatic as possible, and at the same time giving the player a feel of unease. Although I do feel pretty sorry for N with his rough life before the days of Team Plasma. He was raised by wild Pokemon in the woods, creating a deep bond between them and himself. One day, Geddes of the 7 Sages found and adopted him, and even raised him to be their future king. Team Plasma's ultimate plan is to awaken a legendary dragon, and with it, N will defeat the Pokemon League, and people will be forced to free their Pokemon. This dragon changes depending on what version. In black, it'll be a white dragon, or Shiram, and in white, it'll be the black dragon, Zekrom. Her story is interesting, but also kind of confusing. At one point, both of them were the same being, and it was friend to the twin heroes. Both of them had different ideas of what was necessary, with one brother wanting to pursue ideals and the other wanting to pursue truth. And so the dragon split in two, with each of them following one of the brothers. Along the journey, you meet the champion as well, Adler. Out of all the regional champions up to this point, Adler shows up the most and has the biggest impact on the story. Before replaying this, I didn't remember much about him, thinking he was a boring champion. I was wrong though, because he does have a good backstory. Adler at one point was your typical strong trainer, striving to be the strongest until one day when his favorite Pokemon died of illness. Ever since, he's been roaming Unova out of grief. After the 7th gym, N awakens Reshiram in Dragon Spiral Tower. However, N actually wants to prove his point, challenging Hilbert to find Zekrom and meet him in battle. Then he disappears for a while. You're then given a Dark Stone, which is all that remains of Zekrom, and then things go quiet for a while without any incidents. That is until after the 8th gym, where there's only one place left to go, the Pokemon League. Unova's Victory Road is one of the better ones, since instead of having it be one large cave, it's on a mountain full of entrances and exits, slopes to slide down to lower levels, a doctor to heal, stuff that spices things up as well as being less annoying. Moving on, we have a top tier Elite 4, starting with Chantal. Well, not actually, because you can fight them in any order in this game, but I fought her first, and most people do. She's a ghost type user, as well as a bookworm. Her room looks awesome too. Next is Grimsley, who uses dark types, then Catalin, who uses psychic types, and lastly Marshall and his fighting types. All in all, it's one of the easiest Elite Fours. In a champion's room, N soundly defeats Adler to become the new Pokemon champion. First time I played this, I kind of assumed you beat N here and that's that. Oh boy, was I wrong again, because the devs took this to 11 here. Team Plasma literally built a castle beneath the league that rises from the ground to engulf the area. Talk about an idea. I guess if it works for Bowser, it'll work for anyone. N challenges Hilbert to a final battle in the castle to prove once and for all who's right. This castle is just gorgeous, massive, and sets the tone. Again, it's not really something you'd expect to see in Pokemon. In a lot of ways, the endgame kinda reminds me more of a Mother or Paper Mario game. There's even an awesome moment where 6 of the 7 sages come to stop you, but the gym leaders come in to fend them off so you can go ahead. And there's also this really messed up scene in the manga where it shows them getting crucified, so yeah, that's fucked up. Thankfully, there aren't any fights against any Team Plasma members here. Instead, they just have some tidbits of information and some dialogue, suggesting that even they have doubts of their plan. Conveniently, it's also possible to leave and come back, so in case you need to grind, no worries. Strangest of all is N's room. Oh boy, if there is one spooky location in the series that's overlooked, it's this. N grew up here, surrounded by toys, some of which are fairly new, meaning that despite being 20 or so, he still plays with them. The sole purpose of this room is to show that N isn't exactly normal, and the music is perfect. The song has this nursery rhyme nostalgic feel, along with this unsettling, something's not quite right vibe. It's nothing compared to what it was in Black 2 and White 2 though, that's some nightmare fuel right there. At long last comes the final battle. N summons his dragon, which causes the player stone to react, bringing the other legendary back to life, in my case Zekrom. To proceed it needs to be caught. Sounds annoying and maybe a bit nerve-wracking, and it would be if their capture rate wasn't so high. These guys are the easiest legendaries to capture of all time. All it took for me was like one quick ball. With it caught, you get the option to send one of your team members to the PC to make room for Zekrom/Reshiram, and unless you grind a lot, you'll probably need it. N is tough, with the main obstacle being his dragon. Either have something that knows Ice Beam, or use your dragon of your own to take it out. Off the top of my head, I think this is the only trainer battle that I can think of at least, between two legendaries. Add on top of that all the build-up, and this might be the most excited I've been during a Pokemon battle. Once N's dragon is taken out, things get a lot easier, with the only real annoying thing left is his Zoroark and its illusion. The rest of his team have a lot of variety in typing, have strong moves, the whole shebang. After N's defeat, his dreams are shattered, admitting that he was wrong. The struggle isn't over yet though, as we get the icing on the cake, that is the final chapter, the reveal of Geddes' true role and intentions. The whole motivation of Pokemon Liberation was nothing more than a farce. Instead, Geddes is the true mastermind behind everything, with the purpose of Team Plasma being indeed to free Pokemon, but only so Team Plasma could be the only ones with them. Also, to add to N's backstory, when Geddes raised him, he only allowed abused Pokemon around him to sour his opinion of people, along with a lot of other possible child abuse. Most of all verbal abuse, as demonstrated right here. To further show off how evil this guy really is, he legit plans on killing the main character, plain and simple, making the battle of him a literal life and death situation. Geddes is even stronger than N, with an OP Buffalint that took out more of my team than I'd like to admit. His Pokemon have so much coverage over so many types, making it hard to corner him with a super effective type. Needless to say, I had to use some of my Hyper Potions and rely on Zekrom for this fight. After Geddes is beaten, he and the 7 Sages are put under arrest, and N has had his whole world turned upside down. His whole worldview has been proven wrong, his kingdom collapsed, and everything he strived for has amounted to nothing. N talks about how he started having doubts of his plan as soon as seeing Hilbert's bond with his Pokemon. With a whole new uncertain future ahead of him, he thanks the player for everything, and leaves to find his own meaning. Then the credits play. Yeah, that's the end. Very different, that's for sure. Plot twist was great. Legendary dragons, the build-up, the atmosphere, everything was great. However, this is only really the halfway point in the journey, as there's a beast of a post-game left. First off, there are tons of new routes and areas that can now be accessed, with loads more trainers to battle. Yeah, you're seeing this right, most of these trainers are above level 60. That is an insane level jump, possibly the most I've seen in a game ever. Yet most of these trainers are just stupid, having unevolved Pokemon with weak moves, and since this game has a system where the weaker you are, the more XP points you get, it doesn't take that long to grind up to their level. Wild Pokemon as high as the level 60s exist as well, so if you run out of trainers to fight against, well, I guess you wouldn't because, there's the stadiums in the Nebraska City and all that, but, in the meantime, you can find wild Pokemon to fight against. Of course, it does suck not being able to use repels to avoid random encounters for a lot of it. Also, these routes are the ones where most of the mons from previous generations can be found. Better late than never, I guess. On the plus side, since these wild Pokemon are high leveled, at least if you want to make a last minute change to your team, you can do it without having to grind it up. The biggest side quest of the post game involves tracking down the other 6 Sages. A few are on the new routes, while others hide in locations previously visited. A good chunk of the sages regret their decisions, give out TMs, and help the police out with their investigation. To be frank, this quest feels kind of anticlimactic and incomplete. Then of course are the other legendaries, quite a few of which can even be fought before the Elite Four. I just didn't put in the script because it didn't really fit too well. The first one that can be caught is Cobalion in Mr. Alton Cave, then Varisian in Pinwheel Forest, then in Victory Road, Terrakin. The trio helped end a war years ago, don't really like humans, and are frankly just filler legendaries. Moving on, in the Great Chasm is a third legendary dragon Pokemon, Kyurem. Fun fact real fast, originally a third version of Gen 5 was planned to be made, most likely with the title Pokemon Gray. This idea though was scrapped for a number of reasons, mostly because of how the main theme of these games is a struggle between two forces and ideas, so a third version would be hard to make. Most likely Kyurem would have been the box legendary of Gray if it was ever made, so poor thing. Well, it does come back for Black and White 2, albeit with a different role and color, but I'll tackle that in my Black 2 White 2 video. If you've watched any of my other Pokemon videos, you know how much I utterly despise roaming legendaries. And thank God this mechanic got polished so much in this game. For one, there are only two roamers, Thundurus and Tornadus. Each of them can only be caught in one version of the game, Tornadus in black and Thundurus in white. Because of this, you can save hours constantly tracking them down and just use your Master Ball. But even if you don't want to use your Master Ball, catching them is still easier. You can use the bulletin boards to track them down. They stay in one spot for quite a while, and there are visual indicators pointing out where they are. Without a doubt, among the best changes made to the gameplay formula. Thank you for not making me waste 6 hours of my life, Gen 5. If you happen to have both copies of the game, and then trade one of the roamers over to the other, there's one more legendary that can be caught at the Abundant Shrine, Landorus. He too was very easy to catch, and no, I'm not complaining. Well, that's it for almost everything, except for a few small things here and there I'll briefly mention. I actually went out of my way to get a complete Pokedex, and for all my hard work, I got nothing, except for Professor Juniper's respect, which is the greatest reward I could ever ask for. A new city in the postgame varies on the version, with Black being home to Black City, while White is home to White Forest. In Black City there are shops to buy items and a lot of trainers that can be battled daily. White Forest on the other hand has many exclusive Pokemon from other generations that can only be caught here. However, both of them are ruined by a fatal flaw. The more playtime you have, the less stuff that's available, and if you change the internal clock, that speeds up the process. Why on earth they decided to have it be like this is beyond me. All that's left to do now is to take on Elite Four again, and one last ever challenge. For both of these, you need to grind like crazy to even stand a chance. Thankfully, there are tons and tons of ways to get stronger. There's stadiums in Ambassa City full of trainers to defeat daily. Chirin and later Bianca can be refought daily. There's this house full of a high-level Pokemon family and trainers that can also be refought daily. Tons and tons of high-leveled wild Pokemon. And if you're playing Black, you might be able to refight trainers in Black City. All of them are much higher leveled this time, all in the 70s, so try to get your team around the high level 60s before attempting this, unless you plan on just spamming fuller stores the whole time. Once the Elite Four are beaten for a second time, Adler can finally be fought. I was expecting to have a hard time in this battle like I did with Cynthia and Steven before, but in all honesty, this was pretty easy. My Chandelore's Overeat was able to knock out like 3 of his Pokemon before they could even do anything. Samurott took his Dragadoon out with just a couple of Ice Beams, and Volcarona with Acrobatics. So the only Pokemon of his that took any real teamwork to beat was Bouffalant, and even that went down pretty quick. An anticlimactic victory, although I am very happy that I finally got around to beating him this playthrough. Things still don't end there though. I promise to do soon, okay? Just hold out a little bit longer. Anyway, in Undella Town, a certain champion can be found just sitting in a house, ready to be the last challenge. While she might not have any kind of role in the story, which is probably for the better, it's nice that Cynthia got to come back. Her team, while very similar to what it was in Platinum, has a few new additions, like a Bravery and Electros. Most similar of all is how our Garchomp is a pain in the ass. Its strongest move is Dragon Rush. It does a crap ton of damage, so to compensate, it only has 75% accuracy. Well, guess how many times it hit me? Every single time before it ran out of PP, so yeah, I really don't feel bad about spamming items here. Well, that was an adventure. It's been emotional, unique, long, charming, and a lot of fun. I love the characters, the rivals, the villains, and everything it did to stand out from the bunch. While it wasn't exactly popular when it came out, recently Black and White have finally gotten the praise they deserve, being seen as among the best games in the series. It's definitely worth checking out if you skipped over it, although it is fairly pricey, going for almost $100 nowadays. That's nothing though compared to what Black 2 and White 2 go for. Those games cost like almost $150 for just a cartridge alone. Speaking of which, like I said earlier, I do have plans to cover it someday. Not anytime soon, because while I do view that Black and White and Black 2 and White 2 as being different games, not just a standard third version, they are incredibly similar to each other, and for the moment, I'm a little tired of a Nova, so instead, next time we'll move ahead to the next generation, Pokemon X and Y. I hope to see you all then, everyone. It's very difficult for something to go on for a long time and not have some level of decline, whether it be a TV show, movie, or video game franchise. Pokemon is one such series, with the majority of fans agreeing that there has been some noticeable decline in recent years. Not to say the newer games are bad. What fans don't agree upon, however, is when the series peaked, with there being a lot of different opinions thrown out there. Heart Gold and Soul Silver is the most popular choice for being the peak of the franchise, but there's another pair of games that can also be argued to be the best Pokemon games. Pokemon Black 2 and Pokemon White 2. The first 4 generations of the series all got a third version, which improved upon flaws and added some new features. But at the end of the day, they're still the same game as the first 2 releases. Gen 5, however, took a much different route, instead making 2 new versions that add so much, improve so much, and change so much that in my opinion, I wouldn't count them as being a variant, any less than I'd consider Galaxy 2 or Majora's Mask being their own things. And considering how good Black and White are on their own, you probably have a good idea why Black 2 and White 2 are so highly acclaimed. Just in case though, let's dig in and take a closer look. Yet once again, we start off on a great note, an awesome opening cutscene. Come on, I always have to talk about these. From flashy animation to a great art style and character designs, it really gets you pumped up. Also, am I the only one who thinks some of these images kind of look like Persona? I'm not the only one, am I? Anyway, this journey too begins with the hottest professor, introducing us to the world of Pokemon. We have a new pair of main characters too. Instead of Hilbert and Hilda, there's Nate and Rosa. Both of them have to be the most precious pair of main characters so far. Those eyes, they look so innocent and full of excitement like most of us before the hard reality of life sets in. The first city is also different, being a new town, Aspertia instead of New Vema. It's a pretty nice looking town too if I do say so myself. Much fancier than a village of like 5 people, like most of her first towns. 2 years have passed since the events of Black and White. Sharon has now become a gym leader. Bianca works for Professor Juniper, and as for Hilbert/Hilda, well, they never appear, but they seem to be doing well from what everyone says. Bianca gives you your starter, which are the exact same as before, Snivy, Oshawott, and Tepig. You're then recruited to help complete the Pokedex, as well as your rival, Hugh. Yeah, Hugh. I just can't take that name seriously. I will never again be able to hear the name Hugh without thinking of Jimmy Neutron's dad. Anyway, he's actually a pretty good rival, one of the best, and I completely forgot about him. he's a bit more of a hothead, similar to Blue or Silver, an aspect that made them such good rivals. At the same time though, he's a lot nicer. He helps heal you, works with you to beat the bad guys, and isn't nearly as arrogant. Think of him like a fusion between Blue and Barry. He also has a resentment for Team Plasma, since they took his little sister's Pokemon years ago, and gets pissed off when others neglect their Pokemon. Plus, he has a cool design. Overall, he's among my favorite rivals now, and it's too bad he's overlooked. If this was a typical Pokemon retrospective, I'd talk about starters from here. Only the starters are again the same as they were before. The only difference is this time, I bred the other 2 starters from other carts I had, so I could have all 3 of them. It does make the game feel a lot more complete, although it does make things a little too easy sometimes, especially since Tepig had Flamethrower and Oshawott had Surf when I bred them. But that's completely on me. I mean, it's not like someone was holding me at gunpoint to have OP starters and use their strongest moves constantly, so I don't know why I'm complaining about that yet. That's completely on me. Please don't cancel me. Once again, this is not a new generation. In my black and white video, I already talked about most aspects that are new to Gen 5. So here, I'm only going to talk about what's new to Black 2 and White 2. Graphically, there's been a lot of visual refinement. In the menus, icons, the HP bar, they all look way snazzier. All the trainer sprites are fully animated now, many sprites have been redesigned, and many areas have more detail now. Black and White already looked fantastic enough as it was, but its sequel takes it to a whole new level. This game has beautiful sprite work, and visually, in my opinion, is the best looking Pokemon installment by far. It's the last title to use sprites as well. From here, it's all 3D models, which, to be fair, aren't completely terrible. It's just I prefer sprites so much more, and Pokemon just looks so much better in 2D in my opinion, and so many other people's opinions. But they sure did go out with a bang. Quite a bit of music has been remixed as well, albeit not enough. Honestly, I have a hard time telling the difference between the tracks of this and the first game. Also, real fast, if you may remember, in my Platinum video, I mentioned that there's these weird glitching pixels around the edge of the screen, like you can see them. Well, it's basically in every DS Pokemon game, not just Gen 4. For Black and White, I cropped it out, but I forgot to do it this time, so sorry about the glitchy borders in this video. One of the biggest and best changes from before are non-Unova Pokemon. Before, mons from Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, and Sinnoh could only be caught after you beat the main story. Well, unless you traded them, but that kind of takes away the point. Meanwhile, here you can find them everywhere, and very early on into the game as well. I can kind of see why they did that the first time around, trying to get players to choose a newly added roster instead of having another team of mostly Gen 1 mons. In the end though, it ended up being one of the few major flaws of it. Also, remember how annoying it is in old Pokemon games to have to open your bag to use a new repel? Well, that's another change introduced here as well. A text box now pops up when a repel runs out, giving you the option to use another. It may seem like a small thing, but it is super helpful, saving a lot of time over the course of a playthrough. If you need to farm money or XP fighting trainers again, the stadiums in Abasta City come back. But you also have these breeders who can be fought again and again. The only issue is that they refight you basically anytime you walk past your side of view when re-entering an area, which is annoying. I just wish they would have brought back the Versus Seeker from Diamond and Pearl or Fire Red and Leaf Green, or at least a Pokenavi, to be able to refight most trainers, but oh well. The X Transceiver has been changed a little as well. You can use it to call your mom and various other people to get advice from them about certain areas. Best of all though, you can use it to date. Yeah, you can date this girl Yancy, well, sort of. You find her gear, talk to her throughout the game, then she finally retrieves it. She'll talk to you occasionally from here. Again, it's not exactly dating or anything, but it's still kind of strange for Pokemon standards. Welcome change because I like this kind of ambition, but still strange. Also, it's worth mentioning too, that if you chose to play as Rosa, your date will be this guy named Curtis. Also, as a side note, she's actually secretly a celebrity named Nancy. I forgot to put this in the video, so there you go. A crap ton of new areas have been added as well, the first couple of cities being brand new. Flossy Ranch, Castelia City Sewers, Himala City, Reversal Mountain, Vibrant Complex, and more. It's a staggering amount of content, that's for sure, and it does a lot to make Black 2 and White 2 feel like an entirely different game, rather than just a special edition like Crystal or Platinum. Even more so since a lot of the early game areas from before can't be explored until the game is beaten, replaced once again with new ones. However, once you get to Castelia City, the amount of new places declines, which is understandable. I mean, it's not like they could have afforded to make an entirely new map with such a short amount of time. Despite being a whole year since I last played Black and White, there were still times where I still felt a little tired of Unova, especially Nimbasa City. Maybe I should have held off on this video and played another Pokemon title in the meantime, like Sun and Moon or Colosseum, I don't know. But, while we're still on the topic of newly added places, my favorite is the Strange House. This might be the creepiest location in Pokemon, only surpassed by the old chateau. When you enter, objects move around on their own and the music is tense. As you enter rooms, obstacles blocking entrances to other rooms shift, allowing you to enter them. In the middle of this, a ghost girl shows up, saying something about her father, a lunar wing, and some strange Pokemon on a bridge. If you take this lunar wing there, you can catch Cresselia, but we'll get to that later. For some reason, these haunted locations for Pokemon always seem to spook me. A lot more than horror games, like actual horror games like Resident Evil, or, I've been to a lot of supposed real life haunted places, but honestly, those didn't really spook me as much as a fictional area in a children's game. Like, I've actually been to like this murder house before, and it was honestly extremely anticlimactic, but that's a story for another day. But devs really don't have to go this hard when it comes to creating an unsettling atmosphere, yet they do it again and again. While I think the music of the Strange House is the overall creepiest in the series with how ambient the track is, I still find the old chateau scarier. For one, there's no other trainers there, unlike here or Lavender Town, and two, there's much less of a clear purpose or backstory, plus the ghosts there don't talk, making it easier to second guess if you really saw them, which adds extra creepiness. Side modes and bonus content are another huge boon of Black 2 and White 2. It's honestly kind of crazy how much there is to do, and it all adds so much to the replay value. Join Avenue is probably my favorite of the bunch. Think of it kind of like an Animal Crossing game. Various shops can be set up here, some more useful than others. To get these people to set up shop, you have to invite them first. They show up, walking throughout the place. If you talk to them and invite them, they stay. If they do, they set up their shops here, ranging from beauty salons to delis to raffle contests, where you can win a Master Ball. Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Although, I never won, unfortunately, which sucks. I mean, I got like berry juice every single day. You can also recommend shops to passerbys, increasing their popularity, which in turn levels them up, upgrading the services they offer. Getting people to show up, though, is a different ordeal. Every day, a few passerbys show up no matter what. But to get tons of people to come and hence grow the avenue quickly, you need to use the game's wireless features. In the past, this would include internet modes as well, but that shut down a long time ago. Thankfully, you don't need it. Battling with friends locally and trading also works, although Good luck doing that enough to really grow your avenue super quickly, or having enough friends with DSs and copies of this game for that. Anyway, I love this place so much. Having a central location to come back to daily is a treat. It's something I look forward to be excited about, making a little progress every day. In fact, I may consider playing this game every day for a while, for like the next few months or something, just to see how much I can upgrade my avenue. Overall, it's my favorite side mode / side content / whatever you want to call this. A feature somewhat easy to miss is the Entra link. By using the touchscreen, Nate can warp to this place and take on quests. These quests are basically mini-games, challenging the player to do things like collect berries, find certain Pokemon, or fight trainers. The incentives include little boost your XP amounts, or HP and the like. Useful for sure, yet not exactly needed. I wasn't even aware of this mode if I'm being honest, until I already beat the Elite Four, and by this point I was kind of getting tired, so forgive me for not clearing every challenge. Another aspect I neglected are medals. You get them from clearing certain milestones, such as capturing a certain amount of Pokemon, winning battles, or simply just saving the game. This weird professor guy shows up in Pokemon centers to hand them out, which is creepy. Does this guy just follow Nate or Rosa around? Although I like it. It's a nice little dopamine hit when you see him after entering a Pokemon Center, despite the fact that these medals are worthless. The only rewards you get from collecting them are more medals. Plus, some are basically impossible to collect nowadays without certain internet features. Then, there's the Pokemon World Tournament. Here, you face off in a series of matches with various characters not only from Unova like gym leaders, but various characters from past games as well. Misty, Sabrina, Brawly, Falconer, and even eventually Red. Yeah, Red. However, this place is not for the weak, aka casual fans like me who frankly suck at Pokemon, because this place is tough. You have to be good at these games to win here, for so many reasons. Your level is fixed, so grinding isn't gonna help. The AI is much better than with typical trainers. Everyone has moves that are super effective to Pokemon they're weak to. Not to mention that since these gym leaders specialize in a certain typing, you may have 1 or 2 Pokemon with super effective moves against them. So when they go down with a surprise super effective counter move, you're basically screwed. Plus, matches are random, so you can't prepare for anything. Basically, anything you try to do to cheese tournaments fails. Legendaries, they're banned. Grinding, doesn't matter. Super effective moves, they get countered. And on top of that, the RNG just frankly seems to be rigged against you. If you have a move that can miss, it will always miss. And if they have a move that can miss, it will always hit you no matter what. In short, this mode cannot be taken lightly, and I kind of like that. The rest of the main story is easy, with factors players can get prepared for, so a mode like this to always keep you on your toes is nice. Again, I'm a casual player who plays these games for a few dozen hours, then puts them down. So, while I may not have had the best time getting clobbered, I'm sure a lot of hardcore fans who spent hundreds of hours in these games and are looking for something to really spice the difficulty up, love it. Plus, seeing all these trainers again after so long is really cool. The Battle Subway is a mode that was in the first game, which I forgot to talk about. Whoops. It's basically your typical challenge mode. Set levels, random players, you don't get XP from fights, and can earn BP to buy TMs. For double battles, the opposite gendered avatar, either Nate or Rosa, will be your partner. It's always cool when your counterpart gets a purpose, even if the player didn't choose to play as them. PokeStar Studios was a very interesting idea. You fight mock battles and follow a script to produce a movie that you can then watch in a theater. Things won't always go perfectly, and sometimes when you mess up, the results can be hilarious. It's a fun detour, and it feels very distinguished from other side modes. And last of all is the White Tree Hollow, or Black Tower if you're playing Black 2. Here, the player explores floors with the objective of beating the boss. Throughout this dungeon are different trainers, one of which holds the key to the boss. Beat them, and you can skip the rest of the trainers, but you won't know which one it is, and all of them tell you some kind of clue. This place right here has gotta be one of my favorite side modes in B2W2. It's like if you mixed a Zelda dungeon and a typical villain Pokemon hideout. Additionally, Mons can earn XP from fights, unlike the World Tournament or the Battle Subway. Now it's time I talk about my team. Like I already said, I had all 3 starters, Embor, Superior, and Samurott. Superior was overall the least useful of the 3, although it's kind of hard to tell, since Embor and Samurott have better moves from breeding and all the XP boosts. Embor was the best of the 3, since it had dual fighting fire. And speaking of that, it's kind of weird we have so many dual firefighting types as Pokemon starters. And Samurott, meanwhile, was in the middle. Then, I have my Magnezone. I always thought that the Magmite line was weak before. I mean, in previous games, they always seemed to die with one hit. I was wrong though. Mine became extremely useful. It had Sturdy as an ability, had high attack, and high defense, with its dual steel typing. I caught a Silaglyph for my team as well. It's dual psychic flying, which is coverage that my team still needed. I also needed something to learn fly, and the design looks so cool. I mean, what's it even supposed to be anyway? It looks to be based off pre-Columbian American civilizations, something that we don't get enough of. And of course, in this tradition that I've had going on for a while in these videos, of naming my psychic types after mother characters, I named it Anna. Yeah, it really doesn't fit as much as the others, does it? Also, only one more game before I run out of PSI users to name my psychic types, because I've had Nest the Espeon, and Kumatora the Gardevoir, and Pooh the Galede, and Lucas the Runkettler. I forgot what Pokemon he whatever that Pokemon's called. I feel bad for forgetting what it was called, and then I had Paul of a Meowistic, so Nintendo whatever is gonna be the last psychic type Pokemon I name after a mother character anyway. And for my last member, a Flygon, because what team is complete without an OP dragon type? Truth be told though, I was planning on using Crocodile, when I randomly stumbled upon a high-level Vibrava, and figured, why not? Planning a Pokemon team is important, yet part of the fun is having these plans broken. While there isn't a completely new roster of gym leaders, some are new or different. First up is Chirin, a user of normal types. I'm happy that they made him a gym leader, instead of some obscure cameo or something. He is quite a bit easier, to say the least, than the Chef Trio, who always use a super effective type against your starter. And then there's Roxy, a poison type user, who plays in a band in her spare time. Also, her dad is a ship captain of the local harbor, and there is this brief quest where you have to watch his movie to progress, which is honestly pretty funny with how utterly terrible it is. Berg, the bug type user, returns in Castelia City, and I do not have much else to say about him other than his gym looks cool. Elisa comes back too. Yeah, from here, pretty much all the gym leaders come back from the last game. Anyway, her gym has been upgraded, from a roller coaster to a fashion show. She has a new design too, she still uses electric types, and I love all the sound bites that play in the gym. Clay is once again a ground type gym leader, and I severely underestimated him to say the least. Skyla, the best waifu after Juniper, returns too. She once again uses flying types, and you get to fly with her too, which is awesome. The dragon user Drayden is 7th instead of 8th, and Iris is no longer a dual gym leader. Lastly is a new gym leader, Marlin, who uses water types, and is basically a 90s surfer dude. Team Plasma has returned, only they aren't as good as they were in the original. Team Plasma were something special as far as Pokemon teams go. They were sympathetic, under the guise of wanting to liberate Pokemon from human rule. It may have all turned out to be a wash, yet the tension between characters this brought, of having to think deep about their bond with their Pokemon, gave them a depth not often seen in a series. Now though, Team Plasma is much more like Team Rocket, a generic group of bad guys wanting to conquer the world. At least half of Team Plasma, as many of its members have left, rehabilitating themselves. This includes a few of the sages, and sisters, and N himself. After fighting Drayden, Team Plasma freezes the city, and takes from him a mystical item, passed down in his family for generations. DNA splicers, which seems kind of a weird thing to have be this powerful ancient relic. I mean, they could have named it something else than DNA splicers. It could have been like the merging stones or something like that. The DNA splicer sounds too modern in my opinion. But anyway, let's get back on track. Then there's this guy, Corliss, the new on-paper boss of Team Plasma. However, for most of the game, you don't really get that impression. Yeah, it's implied, but he seems a little too helpful at times, and seems a little too scrawny to be the main villain. I honestly forgot who he was before replaying this. Corliss puts research above all else, wanting to find ways to bring out the strength in Pokemon. In actuality though, Geddes is still in charge, wanting to take over Unova again. In the final storm of Team Plasma, former Team Plasma members help out, as well as Hugh, who at long last finds his sister's Purrloin, or at this point, Lightbird. Geddes has captured Kyurem, and has used it for his own nefarious goals, and arrives to help save Nate/Rosa, with his Reshiram/Zekrom, depending on which version of the game you're playing. However, Geddes uses these DNA splicers to merge the two together, and create a super powerful new Pokemon. But not really. It goes down pretty fast in a boss fight, where you can't catch it unfortunately, or else that would be pretty fun to see how pissed Geddes would get, but unfortunately you can't do that, at least not yet. Then Geddes faces you in one last battle, and after that, it's all over. His men take him away to an unknown fate, and Corliss disbands Team Plasma. All in all, 2's Villain Saga is a huge downgrade from its counterpart, but it's still a pretty good final climax. 2's story is fairly average for Pokemon, a bit above average even. Black and White 1 just had such a remarkably good story, but it makes all others pale in comparison. Plus, once again, considering the timetable the devs had, it's impressive what they came up with. Well, there's only one thing left to do once again. Take on the Pokemon League. Victory Road here is a bit too long in my opinion. It's always a slog, but here I was just bored out of my mind. Or that could just be because of me feeling dead inside like I have for the past year and a half. But that aside, Elite Four time. All of them are the exact same they were previously. Chantal and her spooky ghost types, Grimsley and his dark types, Catalin and her psychic types, and Marshall with his fighting types. All in all though, this has to be one of the easiest Elite Fours to take down, partially due to all the trainers there are in Victory Road to level up on. If you take down most trainers, you really don't have to grind at all, which is super nice. The champion is no longer Adler though, having retired. It's Iris. Like Wallace, she too has moved up the ranks, from gym leader to champion, and still specializes in her signature typing, dragons. I forgot how awesome this fight with Iris is. While still behind Cynthia for sure, it's still epic, although in a different type of way. While Cynthia was this intense, unbeatable foe, this fight feels magical, mystical, dreamy. The music perfectly conveys this feeling, pumping me up. In a way, this feels like the pinnacle of Pokemon, each game improving upon the last, adding new features, enhancing graphics, and more. Iris is the final climax of the last 2D Pokemon game. From here, it's all downhill, at least in opinions of a lot of fans. It took us 16 years to get to this point, so let's savor it. She's just easy enough to be beaten without spamming hyper potions or grinding for hours, yet not so easy that you're just going for the motions. Like Diantha, I had no grand strategy, no plans made beforehand, just on-the-fly decisions, which is what these games are all about. Iris is quite charming after being defeated, so excited that she pushes him around impatiently. It's the little details like this that I love. Everyone congratulates the new champion, the credits roll, and you make it home to see your mom in a slightly emotional moment. What is this, Earthbound? Jokes aside, the post-game is massive. Firstly are tons and tons of new areas. Well, and not all of them are exactly new, but routes, mostly early ones from the first game, which were blocked off until now, are now open. I'd advise taking them on one at a time, while checking out other side content in between, instead of what I did, which was just take on every new route in 2 sittings, because not a whole lot is exactly new or interesting on the surface. It's just regular trainer fights, and let me tell you, fighting 100 trainers in a row is kind of exhausting. And by the time that I started to check out all the other content, like, Pokemon World Champion, I really wish I wouldn't have held off on that until I beat the game and I was really tired of it, because I probably would have had more fun with it. But anyway, what I would again recommend doing is do all the side quests and bonus content of a certain place in between clearing the routes, as to not become bored and tired. The most glamorous of the side content are all the legendary Pokemon. The amount of legendary Pokemon in this game is insane, only beaten by Sun and Moon in the sheer amount of legendaries you can catch. The Swords of Justice can be caught before beating the Elite Four, Gabalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. Nothing really special, except for them showing up in ordinary locations, instead of their own lairs like before, or how I caught one of them with a single quick ball, which was pretty cool, and invites you to his castle, being ruined after 2 years of neglect. Here, he challenges you in a battle. After winning, he gives you a special stone, containing his legendary Pokemon. If you take it to Dragon Spiral Tower, it becomes either Zekrom if you're playing Black 2, or Reshiram if you're playing White 2, and of course, you can catch it. And with that, N's story comes to a close. He's learned so much about the world, he's free from Geddis, and with his faction of Team Plasma, he'll help people from now on. He still has scars for sure, but it's good to see him get a happy ending. With your new dragon, Kyurem appears in a giant chasm as well. With both of them in hand, you can use those DNA splicers to fuse them together into one Pokemon like Geddis did, and this fusion is pretty overpowered. The Storm Trio don't return unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because I hate catching the first 2. To make up for this though, many, and I mean many old legendaries return, nearly a dozen. In the Dream Yard, either Latios or Latias can be caught. The Prior shows up in Black 2, the latter in White 2, and thank God they're not roamers. After that, you encounter Cresselia on Marvelous Bridge, if you got that lunar wing, the one you get from the Ghost Girl. Next are the Reggies. A new cave opens up in Driftvale, containing a chamber. When you first enter it and solve a quick puzzle, Regirock is there. After catching it, you get a key to a new chamber. This key can't be used in-game. Instead, players need to use it before opening their save file on the menu. If you do so, Either Regice or Registeel can be caught too, but each of them are version exclusives, kind of. You do need to have access to both versions of the game to catch both, but you can share these keys between versions and catch both on the same save file. With all three in hand, for Master, Regigigas can be caught too, but we're not done yet. Heteron is in Reversal Mountain, and Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf can be caught too. And once again, thank God none of them are roamers. In total, that makes 15 possible legendaries that you can catch in-game, which is a lot, and wouldn't be surpassed until Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Various high-leveled trainers are now fightable too, from Adler, to daily fights with Hugh, to former Team Plasma members. Corliss will give you a second Master Ball after being beaten, and I kind of wish that I would have known that before I went through all the hard work of trying to catch them without a second Master Ball to rely on. When that's all over, refight the Elite Four, as they're now a lot stronger, yet so is I, and it seems like in every new playthrough of a Pokemon game lately, my teams just keep getting higher and higher leveled. This is my strongest team that I have ever assembled, even stronger than my Y team, which is saying something about how easy it is to level up there. In short, the Elite Four were a piece of cake, which only leaves one more trainer, Cynthia. Fighting her also isn't much of a challenge, at least compared to Diamond and Pearl, or even Black and White 1, because of how easy it is to get strong, just by side content and not grinding. You'll most likely be the same level, if not higher than her. I swept her whole team, only needing to use one item, that being a full heal because she used Hypnosis. I was fast enough to outspeed most of her Mons, and strong enough to one-hit KO them, and also strong enough to tank her super effective moves against me. She wasn't even able to kill one of my Pokemon, and seeing her Garchomp go down with one Draco meter and not even be able to attack me adds years to my life. Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 overall is one of the best Pokemon games. The gameplay is nearly perfect, and the sheer amount of content is mind-boggling. By the end of my playthrough, I was 50 hours in. For context, that is the most time I have spent in a single game file in over 2 years. And I barely scratched the surface of a lot of the side modes, just playing enough to get footage and talk about them for this video. If I were to keep playing until nearly 100% completion, we're probably looking at 70 or 80 hours, maybe even 100 or more, which is insane. The sheer amount of legendaries, all the Pokemon variety, great characters, appealing graphics, and tons of areas to explore. What Game Freak packed into one cart is impressive. In a way, I was overwhelmed by all there is to do, being burnt out by the end, which is a shame. But I felt that way about tons of games lately, even some of my absolute favorites. I really wish I could have gotten to play this as a kid, instead of when I was a college freshman. Yeah, I've had fun alright, but with how I was able to grow attached to games others see as mid, like Super Paper Mario, or the original Super Smash Bros., this could have become one of my favorite games of all time. I'd place Black 2 White 2 as my fourth favorite installment in the Pokemon franchise, behind the Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn games. But if I had to be objective, I think Black 2 and White 2 is the best Pokemon game, with its refined gameplay and vast amount of content. Its only real flaw is a somewhat mid-plot and its price on eBay. Yeah, this game is not cheap, so I would really appreciate it if you could like the video, subscribe, comment below, share this video with your friends, which is a thing I don't think literally anyone does, and besides, nobody has friends anymore. Watch my other videos and all that, so I can hopefully make enough ad revenue to make back the money I spent on this game for this video. I've made about half a dozen Pokemon retrospectives so far, just like this one, so be sure to check those out too. Here's the playlist right here. Anyway, tell me which Pokemon video you think I should do next, and until then, next time.